Welcome everyone to our webinar today. We are really excited to share with you IQ Panel 4 in a commercial warehouse. There's actually a really great story here that we're excited to share today. We hope you all can hear us well, that you're all comfortable and ready to listen. We've got some great things, but we don't just want you to listen, we also want you to participate. So do me a favor right now. I want you to go into your GoToWebinar control panel and find this section called Chat or Questions. And I want to hear from you. I want to hear where you're calling in from. Maybe tell me what you're planning on doing this weekend. The weather's starting to turn really nice. I would love to hear how the weather is shaping up in your area and what you're planning on doing. Now that the weather's warm, I know my wife is eagerly getting ready to make me go plant flowers in the evenings and on the weekends. I've got all sorts of lawn work. She mentioned to me the other day, maybe we should consider one of those robot lawnmowers. And I said, but how are we going to build character with the kids if we don't make them mow the lawn? She's like, but I can never get them to do it. I'm like, precisely why we need to make them do it. So anyway, lots of fun. Lots of people jumping in here. Again, we got lots and lots of people here today. Paul in Hanover, Massachusetts, glad you're here. Frank, good to see you again, buddy. Chris in Williams Lake, British Columbia, awesome. Brandon in Toronto. Dwayne from Zebulon, North Carolina, very cool. Michael Graves says he's going to be enjoying porch beer this weekend. Nice. Nick and Austin, welcome. Rocky, glad you're here. Tim, David, Tristan, Dwayne. Oh, car show, huh? That'll be fun. The Good Guy car show this weekend. That'll be fun, Dwayne. Carissa Young, glad you're here. Farley, Chris, Jeffrey, Pete Suika, Matthew Miller, Greg, James, Robert, Eric, Brendan, Steve, Bruce, Mark. Oh, so many great people. Dallas, Alabama, people from Prelock Security, SCI Global, Raleigh, North Carolina, going to play some golf. That's great. Dustin says it snowed 30 centimeters of snow on Saskatchewan, so I guess he'll be shoveling this weekend. Terry's ready to go fishing. Stanley's going to go. That's Steve. Steve's going to go turkey hunting this weekend. Stanley, Norman, good to see you, buddy. So many great familiar faces and many new ones too. So awesome to have everyone here today. Really, really appreciate everyone taking time out of their day. And this is going to be a relatively short webinar. We don't want to take a ton of your time, but we want to make sure that you got a chance to ask questions, just like you chatted into us and let us know where you're calling in from and what you're doing. That's how you're going to ask a question. So if you have a question for our special guest or for one of our panelists, please type it in there and we'll do our best to get it on the air today with you. Couple other things, housekeeping items. We are recording this session, so of course, if you want to review this afterwards, want to share it with a friend, want to rewatch it, try and remember what you were talking about, then you'll be able to do that. That should be uploaded to our YouTube channel later on today. I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat the URL for our YouTube channel. It's just youtube.com/Qualsys. If you are not already subscribed to it, I recommend subscribing. If you've got a Google address, a Google login, you should be able to subscribe relatively easily. You go to that YouTube channel, there should be a big subscribe button. And when you click that, there's also an option to turn on bell or notifications. Anytime we create a new video, maybe it's a new commercial, maybe it's a new tutorial video, maybe it's a webinar we just hosted that you may or may not have been registered for, when you click that bell icon, you're going to get notified of those items. So that way they'll come right to you immediately and you can be able to watch them and use them as you see fit. And a lot of the video content we create is for you. It's not only to help educate you, but also for you to use out in the market. If you wanted to put it on social media, you wanted to use it for, your latest, marketing campaign, drop it in an email, put it on your website, things like that. There's a lot of great content that's going out on that YouTube page regularly. So make sure you subscribe to that. So we are recording this session. That will be posted later on today, and we'll also email that link out to you tomorrow. We also want to make sure that you are participating in the polls, like we mentioned, and in the chat, like we mentioned, and we have a few poll questions that we wanted to ask you. And so the first poll question I have is, have you installed an IQ panel on a commercial job? And you've got two options, either yes or not yet. Now, many of you might have installed IQ panel in a residential job. I'm looking to know if you've installed it on a commercial job. And that's going to be very telling for us to understand, what kind of frame of reference you have for this particular topic today, because again, we're talking specifically about using IQ Panel 4 in a commercial setting. It looks like most people have voted, and it is a dead heat for evenly between yes and not yet. So quite a few of you have not used IQ Panel in commercial. I hope this is really beneficial to you. So thank you again for answering that poll question. I've got another poll question for you. Which panels do you use? And choose all that apply here. Which panels do you use for your commercial installations? Is it IQ Panel 4? Maybe you also, or instead of, use a DSC Power Series Neo, or maybe it's a Power Series Pro, or maybe it's something else. Maybe it's like a DMP or a Residio or something like that. I'd love to hear what those are. You can put your comments in the chat if you chose other in this, and it looks like there's a small percentage of people choosing other here. And I'd be curious to know what that product is. And maybe you could even put in the chat why you choose that one over an IQ Panel 4 or a Neo or a Pro. I think that'd be interesting insight for our team. We're always looking to earn your business, and that dealer feedback that you guys provide us on a regular basis goes right into our product mix. It goes right into what we're doing, development. As many of you know from the last webinar we did, we're developing IQ Pro for the commercial audience, and we want to make sure that it checks all the boxes for you and brings some great innovation. So knowing what you're using and why you prefer that really helps make sure that we can deliver something to you that hits the price point you're looking for, but also provides the features and benefits that you're looking for in a commercial panel. So thank you again for those answers in the poll. I'm going to go ahead and close that poll. And then I do have one additional poll question here, and let me launch that. Approximately what percentage of your business is commercial versus residential? Is it 100% commercial? Are you doing maybe 75% commercial and about 25 residential? Again, this is just approximate. Maybe you're 50-50 between commercial and residential. Maybe you are mostly residential, but you do a little bit of commercial, like 25% or so. Or maybe you are 100% residential, you don't touch commercial at all. Just curious to know what kind of audience we're talking about here. We want to tailor our conversation today to you to make sure that you are getting the information you need to be able to fulfill your business needs as best you can. So I'm going to go ahead and close that poll as well. Really good feedback here, everyone. Thank you very much for doing that. And let's see here. I think we've got Bo Freeman and Cody and Freddie and Siggy on the line today. We'll do some introductions here. Bo, I'm going to turn the time to you. You found Cody through Siggy and Freddie, and we're able to line up this great testimonial and this example of using IQ Panel 4 in a commercial warehouse. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about our guests today?
Yeah, absolutely. So sorry, we're trying to get Cody in here, get him all set up. We got him in the webinar. We just got to make sure we can get him off mute. So Cody, if you wouldn't mind trying to take yourself off mute, I'll just introduce ourselves and see if we can get your audio here. We've got Siggy here. Siggy is awesome. If any of you work with Siggy, he's like the best guy ever. He is the sales rep that works with Cody. Oh yes, Cody, we can kind of hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect. There he is. Okay, yeah, we've got, so Siggy works with Cody. He's a sales rep. So Cody, I'll just turn some time over to you to introduce yourself, talk about who you are, the company you work for, how long you've been in the industry, just a little bit so everybody can get to know you a little bit.
My name's Cody Shangro. I work with Comprehensive Systems out of Las Vegas, and we do commercial and residential security. And we do surveillance. We do pretty much anything data related.
Awesome.
Very cool. Welcome. Cool. Glad to hear, Cody.
And Cody, how long have you been in the industry, Cody?
2 years.
2 years. Awesome. Very cool. That's great. Got some good experience in your belt. Awesome. Yeah. Siggy, how did you get connected with Cody and his company? Was it through distribution? How did that relationship come about?
Yeah, I got a call from distribution, and they were having this. Cody had this big commercial job, and they wanted to quote the exact product to go out to the job site. And then I decided I reach out to Cody and said, hey, why don't I go to the job site and walk the job site with you? So I did. It happened to be like a huge warehouse, and once I got in there and immediately being me, old school, said, okay, we're gonna do, like a Neo or like a Pro. But then I started looking at everything. It's like, we can do this in a different way. Reach out to Freddie and talk a little bit about it, discuss it with Cody, and we decided to go with a IQ4, you know, and one of the things that what the customer required is to have the hard wire contacts on the bay doors in the back of the warehouse, and by adding the translators, wired to wireless Power G translator, that gave us the ability to give that with the request for the customer. So it turned out to be great at the end, and I will let Cody just talk a little bit more about it. Here he is. You're muted.
I got it to work.
There you go.
Perfect.
Welcome.
Yeah. So let's just talk a little bit about the warehouse, right? Siggy and Cody, what you were talking to me, Cody, and you said this thing was massive. It's got tons of pallets, all that stuff. Tell us a little bit about that warehouse.
Yeah, it's a massive, it's like a shipping warehouse. So it's 3 warehouse suites that have been, walls have been tore out, they've been put together, and it's floor to ceiling pallet racks.
So what were their needs? What were they looking for in a security system? What were the kind of things were they trying to protect, or not necessarily protect, but in what ways were they trying to protect it? Was this just a simple, we just need something if a door window sensor goes off, or were they looking for motion? What were they looking for?
A little bit of everything. They have glass breaks, they have motions, they have door and window contacts. They went full, they wanted everything.
Yeah, and there's 3 offices. I mean, pretty much is the whole warehouse. Then they have the main office, and then they have a remote office on the side, very far away, where they have all the data and access control equipment. So they wanted that protected also. So
Were they doing multiple partitions or just a single partition?
Single partition.
Okay. And how many people were coming in and out of that warehouse?
They have a few hundred employees.
yeah, a lot.
So would each person need their own login and their own code, or how did that work?
No, only a select few. The management, the upper management and stuff have the codes to get in. A lot of the people just work there. So there's probably 30 people that'll have separate codes and access IDs.
Interesting. So what made you decide to use IQ panel in this scenario instead of something else?
Well, they were going from a Vista. They had Vista 20. And they weren't happy with that just because they were getting so large that the Vista just wasn't working. So now I knew about the Qualsys panels. I've had some experience with the IQs before in a large house. We had a 6,500 square foot house we wired with Qualsys before, and it seemed to work pretty well. So that's why we were thinking to go with the Qualsys panel instead of, let's say, the GCE2 or GC3 with Norco, because they wanted wired, and the wired support on the Norco stuff wasn't that great.
Well, so they wanted, was it a combination of wired and wireless, or just all wired?
No, they have all wired.
So this was a takeover then. You were taking over the old Vista system completely and basically replacing it with
Yes.
So tell us about that experience. How did that go for you? Was it hard? Was it easy? What complications did you run into, and what made that job simpler for you?
The job was pretty simple after we got the firmware updates handled, because when I picked up the equipment from the distributor, it was still running on the old firmware, and we needed the new firmware to run the amount of doors and everything that we had to connect to it. So that was a little bit of a wait. I had to wait a couple days after I picked up the equipment to wait for the firmware to be launched. But after I got everything flashed and the firmware updated, I mean, it basically seemed like it put itself together after I wired it. Everything went right in. I mean, it was one of the most painless wired installs I'd ever had.
That's great. I'd love to hear more about that. But before we dive into that, tell me about the firmware upgrade. How did you do that? Did you do that back at your house or at the office and then bring it to the warehouse, or did you connect to their Wi-Fi to do all that?
No, I connected to their Wi-Fi and did everything there.
So you were able to connect to their Wi-Fi at their office, download the patch, get it installed. How long did that whole process take?
I think it took, we tried it once, we messed with it for about an hour, hour and a half, and it wasn't working just because we were trying it like a day before the firmware was supposed to actually be launched.
Got it.
So
Exactly.
we came back on
This was
Monday,
a brand new
tried it on
patch.
that Monday, and it went.
You were one of the first people to use that new firmware then.
Yeah.
Got it.
He
Got
was
it.
the first one. He was the first one, Jeremy. He
Oh, really?
came on a
The very
Friday
first,
and he
great.
tried it. And well, we had to wait till Monday and it just flowed right through from that point.
So
Yeah,
once
we knew that.
once we had posted the patch to the servers, you were able to download that relatively quickly. The panel rebooted, and then you were able to start the installation process.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned that it was really, really easy to get everything wired in. I mean, that the unit itself, the IQ Hardwire Power G, where you wire everything in, did that feel unique to you at all? Did it feel like a pretty standard, wiring panel? What was that experience like?
It was a little different from the older ones because the last one with the IQ I used was probably 2 years ago, right when I first started. It was when they still had the small ones. And I can't remember what panel version it was. It might have been I can't remember now. It was 2018.
Hardwire 16. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was an older panel we did, but the new ones, I just like they were large. You're able to conceal the batteries right inside the panel. I mean, I didn't do that. I went with a different setup with it. Because I had the zone expanders also. So I wired zone expanders into the module itself where the battery was supposed to go, mounted them up high on the wall, and I just ran a cable down and mounted an external can to hold the batteries and the power supplies.
Okay.
That way we
How
could have
long did that
everything
take
just
to
go
wire
through
it
one
all
unit.
up?
It didn't take too long. I mean, after I got everything put in, I think I had both because I ran 2 translators and 2 expanders. I think I had them both wired up in one night.
Did you use any resistors, or did you the ones that came with it, or did you?
Yeah, I used the 4Ks that came with it.
Okay. Nice. Nice. Get some good questions from the audience here too. And those of you who are listening in, if you've got questions for Cody on this install, please chime in. Michael wants to know, since it was one area, were there multiple keypads used?
No, it was at one time. It was a multiple system place. They had 2 keypads and 2 different suites, but we put it all in one localized keypad.
Got it. Where did you end up putting that keypad, the primary panel there?
Right in the administrator's office, right where everybody comes in and out.
Mhm.
They got the administrator on one side of the warehouse, and they've got the employee entrance on the other. And it's usually the upper management gets there first, so we put the keypad right there where they could get to it when they come in.
Got it. Seems like a
And
perfect.
they were pretty happy with that keypad, right, Cody? We talked about they were excited to have this newer, nicer keypad. That's something you mentioned to us, right?
Yeah, I was a little worried at first them going from an old Vista analog keypad going straight to the touch screen, but honestly, that keypad is the ease of access on it is so great. I hardly had to train them at all. They picked it up pretty easy.
That's great to hear. We designed this stuff in the hopes that that will be the case, and it's real customer cases like this that really helps to confirm that. So, I always tell people, oh, well, you didn't get an instruction book with your iPhone, so why do you need it with this? But, you always cross your fingers and say, hopefully there's not a ton of customer training that needs to go on here, and stuff like this confirms it. So that's excellent. That's excellent.
That's great.
That's awesome. And I wanted to clarify, right? So I think that I made a mistake, and I put that this was a 7,000 square foot warehouse because I am a young, ignorant person, and I thought 7,000 square feet is ginormous. But it was a typo, right? I was missing a 0. We're more in the 70,000, right? Is that, Siggy, kind of what we were discussing? It's much larger than 7,000 square feet.
Yeah, we're in
It's
the
massive.
about 70,000, or if not, it could be a little bit bigger than that. It's massive.
So that leads me to my next question, and it's one that Michael Graves has as well. Did you have to use any repeaters for your sensor? So you got your everything was wired in. So did you add any Power G sensors and any repeaters in there?
No, we didn't add any Power G sensors. They are 100% a wired system up to the translator, but I did buy a repeater, but I tried it without it, and it works perfectly without it. But I have one on hand. We figured we'd run it for a month or so and see how it did.
Yeah, I mean,
Since
if everything's all wired, you wouldn't need the repeater. It would be if and when you put a wireless sensor there, a Power G sensor. So let's say that later on, instead of having, like they say, well, let's add another sensor over here. Now, instead of having to rent a scissor lift and run a bunch of conduit and wire, you can simply put a Power G sensor in that location, make it very easy to install, and then it should reach the panel, easily enough. If and when the panel is too far away from that sensor, that's when you might use that repeater, but there's a high likelihood you won't need that. I mean, I've heard of situations where people are using it in 20,000. I think the largest I heard was 50,000 square feet, where they were doing it with Power G and still didn't need repeaters. Now, one particular job, and I think it was 2 or 3 years ago that I was talking to them, they had a 50,000 square foot warehouse. They bought 4 repeaters thinking they would need all 4. They installed it all with Power G wireless sensors, and they didn't need to use a single repeater for that whole job. So they said it was super impressive. In fact, I believe the technician had to treat the manager to dinner because he bet him that he would need to use the repeater and he didn't need it. And so the technician lost the bet. And he's like, at the whole time he was at dinner, he's like, I just couldn't believe it could go that far. I honestly I couldn't believe it could go that far. So
if we do, I'm not too concerned about the distance of it. I'm more concerned about between the panel and, let's say, the farthest suite where they might want to throw a sensor in later. It's 500 or 600 feet at least, and it's got probably 60 or 70 pallet racks that are floor to ceiling in between the panel and that area, and a wall.
You might still be pretty impressed. I've heard Power G going farther than that for sure. So, but yeah, it'd be very. I would love to hear back.
I heard they have the best range right now.
Yep.
Yeah, I would love to hear about it. If you end up going back and putting a sensor in that, please let us know what that is. Like, we've got more questions from the audience here, or comments. Michael Gray says, we install in larger warehouses 100K to 600K square feet. I'd be hesitant that to go that large. And Freddie, I believe you believe that with repeaters, Power G could go that distance, right?
That wouldn't even be a problem.
Yeah. Rocky says one IQ panel 4 with 4 remote keypads. This property sits on 25 acres. Be a big test for the IQ panel 4. We'd love to hear the results of that test for sure.
Definitely.
Bruce wants to know from Cody if you added any automation to the panel. Did you add any rules or any smart devices to it, or is it just security?
No, it's just security. It's going to be connected to the card access system.
Okay.
But that hasn't been connected yet. It's still an ongoing project. The security side of it's done.
Access control. Great. Okay. Let's see. Craig wants to know, is Power G less powerful with IQ Panel 4 versus Neo? You know, that's a shootout I've never done. And I don't know if Freddie knows the answer to this. I think because the radios are inside the panel and there's, you know, potentially some interference from the LCD screen, that it might go a little not as far as a Neo, but it might be so close that you wouldn't notice it. I know that IQ Panel 4, we did a lot of really great technology improvements on that radio set versus IQ Panel 2. So if you had an IQ Panel 2 and an IQ Panel 4 together, the Power G sensors on IQ Panel 4 would go farther. And that was something that we didn't anticipate and we're pretty excited about. So
yeah, I think we get 4,500 feet on the IQ 4. And if you remember the IQ 2, you had that funny antenna you had to stick in the wall. And if you didn't do that right, you had 200 feet, if that, right? So it's gotten a lot better with the IQ 4. And you can, the way you seem to get greater range with the Neo is that you have the ability to hardwire that transceiver to the middle building and allowing you to put repeaters on the 4 corners and covering the whole area. So we can do similar things with the IQ4 panel as well. If anybody has any design needs, they can reach out to me. I'd be glad to help out with that. Yeah, but without a doubt, Power G has changed the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. James Matt asks, is there a wire distance limitation on using auxiliary touchscreens as long as your Wi-Fi is good? It's an interesting question because right now, really the only limitation, as long as your touchscreen has power wherever you're powering it up, then the only limitation on getting an IQ remote touchscreen connected with the primary panel is the strength of the Wi-Fi network. And that's something that we're working very hard to improve with the upcoming IQ Wi-Fi 6 product. And you can get IQ Wi-Fi now in market. But we're also developing, if you attended our last webinar, we're also developing a new IQ remote that uses Power G to communicate. That will be out later this year. We're really excited about that one. And that one is nice to have Wi-Fi added so you could do things like video doorbells and camera streaming and things like that through it. But even if you wanted to only just do the security functions and the Z-Wave type functions on it, you could still do that with that you know, using Power G. So you'll be able to get some amazing distances out of that. So be watching for that one, James, because I think that'll help you a lot. Lots of questions in here. I'm trying to weed through them here. Why don't I look at the questions? I don't know if one of you guys have another question for Cody while I look through these questions and see if there's something else that we can ask him.
So we briefly talked about this 4.1 software. Cody, were you waiting to do the job to get this 4.1 software? Was that kind of where the situation, like you needed that before we could kind of proceed with the job? Or am I way off base?
No, we went ahead and we proceeded. We got everything wired up. Before we even got the hardware, I'd already started wiring the doors and getting the wire ran over to where they were going to be mounted. So that way when everything was ready, I could just put it up and it'd be ready to go. So it wasn't like it was holding up the job, but without it, it would have made it a little more difficult to figure out how we were going to get everything they wanted online.
Yeah, that makes sense. Freddie, do you have any more insight? I know we've talked a little bit about this 4.1 software, but and I may be speaking out of turn here, so Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, but this software was put out here, right, to help expand the possibilities of commercial, right? Because we love the IQ Panel 4. It's powerful. It's got a lot of capabilities, and we wanted to expand the possibilities for your commercial install. So I know a little bit about it, right? It expanded the zone count and things like that. Freddie, is there anything else important about that 4.1 software that we could expand on or talk about?
Well, before we had the 4.1 firmware, and we could add the 1.2 firmware of the translator, that translator was only good for 8 hardwired zones. You could still use 2 translators on the IQ panel, but you were limited to 8 zones each, 16 hardwired zones. So you can see how far we've come along with the 4.1 and the 1.2 combo. We're ready for commercial. We really are. And I think you were relieved to find that job just went right on through. As soon as we got past that firmware question mark, this thing just, like you said, just about installed itself.
Yeah,
all those
also the ability of having the 4 partitions on the panel gives you that freedom of adding or playing with the partitions over at the location. Eventually, I see this probably location when they do and secure the data room where the access control is. You know, that could be a separate partition at its own, and it could be independently controlled. So it's
I think eventually that's what's going to happen is they're going to take that other half of that far suite and they're going to put that on a separate partition, because I don't know if that's going to turn into the new admin office.
Yeah,
but I know coming down the line we're going to be putting some changes into it.
Yeah, even if they turn into an admin office, that particular room where the data equipment is could be its own partition and secure individually from the rest of the site.
Yeah,
that's a great feature there too.
A lot of people asking about IQ Pro in the chat. I put a link to that in the chat, the link to the announcement that we made right before ISC West in Las Vegas a few weeks ago, so that you can access that and take a look at that if you'd like. I got a question here from Brian. Mentions that he's using IQ Panel 4 with Power G on large farmyards in several buildings. Wanted to know, and maybe this is a piece of feedback we could take back to the team, Siggy and Freddie. Will we soon see a Power G repeater that can be installed outdoors without installing it in a heated PVC enclosure? I wasn't aware. I assume that means that and I'm just the marketing guy, right?
I have an experience with putting the. I have an experience putting the repeater on a NEMA box here in Las Vegas. We did the shooting range for the Metro Police, and it's way out there in the desert. And they have this big metal containers where they keep the ammunition, and they're separate, and they don't have power in there. And so we put some Power G contacts, but as soon as we close those doors, it's all metal, and it killed the system. So we put the repeaters outside the metal doors with NEMA boxes, and they work perfectly. So put it in out in the environment with NEMA boxes, it does improve the performance there, and it helps.
Excellent. Another question for Cody. John wants to know, was the job completely hardwire, or were there any wireless devices that were already existed with that Vista 20 setup?
With Vista, they were running totally wireless. I mean, I'm sure at one time that, because like it was 3 different businesses at once. At one time, that was 3 different businesses, and the one business, every time the suite would open, they would snatch it up, knock down the wall, and make it bigger.
Yeah.
So that was the issue. So I know at one time there was wired contacts in there, but as far as if they were for them or they were for the previous business, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because there was 3 separate systems I took out of there.
Daniel wants to know, have you had to go back for anything, or if have you had any issues since then that would, and how did you resolve them? Did you drive back or did you resolve it remotely?
You know, there was no really, I wouldn't say issues. There was a few things that the customer wanted changed in programming. If they wanted different, I was able to change remotely. But as far as having to make any repairs on site, I mean, I've had to move a couple things, but other than that, no.
Been able to do
And
it
the stuff
remotely.
they wanted me to
What
move
kind of
was,
programming things? Are we talking about like adding a user or changing a setting?
no, a lot of just changing settings. They didn't like it that every time someone would open a door that it would talk to them, because it is in the admin office and they have so many doors getting opened and closed. It was nonstop talking.
Yeah. And you
And
could
they didn't
go
like
in
the
and
time.
remotely change whether or not a particular sensor did. Now, did you just turn off the voice altogether, or did you change it by sensor?
We started out changing it by sensor, but then eventually they just wanted them all off. So I just went, because I'm still on site for some other projects we have going over there. So when I went there, I just turned the voice off completely.
Nice. Interesting. I love that you got that capability there. That's great. Let's see. Lots of comments and things like that. Trying to find something that's we haven't. Kevin and others have all mentioned that Neo was touted as 6,500 square feet range, or sorry, not square feet, 6,500 feet for range. So if IQ Panel 4 is 4,500, then that kind of gives you the balance between Neo and IQ Panel 4. And then IQ Pro will have similar range to Neo, if not further. So Michael wants to know, how many users and logins did you end up creating?
They have, I want to say, 8 or 9 online logins where they can arm and disarm with their phone, but they probably have about 30, I would say roughly 30 different codes in the panel.
Jared wants to know, did you use custom names or did you use the names that were already pre-populated in the system?
Custom names.
Custom names. So you gave each one its own little custom name so that it was perfect for that situation. That's great.
Yeah, we had to, because all their doors are pretty much on one back wall. They've got it's overhead door after overhead door. And before, what we had done was another one of their facilities, when we hardwired it, we daisy chained, let's say they had 3 rows overhead doors together, we put all 3 doors on one zone. But for some reason, they wanted everything on its own individual zone. So it got a little creative with coming up for different names for 3 doors that are right next to each other. But
nice. Pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. We're wrapping up to the end of our time here. Cody, your overall opinion of IQ Panel in a commercial setting. Now, obviously, you've used it in a wired. Would you try it in a wireless setting where you use Power G? And would you use IQ Panel 4 again in a commercial setting?
Yes, actually, we're going to recommend that the new IQ4, because they have probably 15 different facilities all around the country, and we handle the security for most of them. And I think it's going to be something they're going to do in the future on other facilities as well.
That's excellent. Excellent. Well, we really appreciate it. Siggy, Bo, any additional questions for Cody before we wrap up?
Well, one of the things that they standardized, which I think they will on IQ4 all across their facilities, the beauty of that is they can also manage them all with one sign-on, with one phone. They have access to all their 15 facilities in one app. So that will be a great add-on for them.
Yeah, really will. Really will. Well, we really appreciate it. Cody, we're going to need some help from you today, because one of the things we're doing for our audience is we're going to be giving away an IQ Panel 4. People that have registered for the webinar today are also entering our contest, and we're going to give that to one of the lucky winners who's been here today. So I need you to give me the first number that pops in your head between 1 and 500.
Let's go 350.
350. All right, let's scroll through here. Looks like the winner is Mark Mondu. Mondous. Mark, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. That's awesome. You just won yourself an IQ Panel 4. You know what? This has been such a good webinar today. I really love, Cody saying, Cody, we're definitely going to send you a prize pack. And I feel like we should probably send a few prize packs to some of your audience members today too. Give me another number between 1 and 500. Let's give some prize packs away to some people.
Let's go with 455.
455. All right. William Evans. William
Evans, he works for us. He can't have
that's
any
Dusty?
prices.
That doesn't count. All right, give me another number. Well, we'll just back up for that. Wesley Michael. Wesley Michael's the one right before that. Wesley Michael, you win. We're going to send you a prize pack to the address. So, Bo, make sure you write these down. All right, Cody, give me another number.
Go with 150.
150. Chris Wheeldon. Wheeldon. Chris Wheeldon, congratulations. You also get a prize pack. And let's do one more just for fun.
Let's go with the number 1.
Number
There you
1,
go.
Aaron Beaver. Congratulations, Aaron. This has been fun. Really appreciate the time, you guys. Really appreciate all the great things. I got oh man, pick me. Sorry, Jared. How about another one, says Bill. Dang. We really appreciate everyone joining in. We're going to keep doing more of these drawings on all our webinars coming forward, so make sure you join into them as we do them. We'll have another one here in a few weeks. I'm not sure what the topic is. Bo, have we picked that topic yet that we can share, or is that still top secret?
Still under wraps. We'll get it out there soon, though.
But watch for your emails. We'll get that out to you. I do have another poll question for everyone here, and that is, I would like to learn more about, and choose all that apply here. Maybe you want to learn more about IQ Panel 4 in commercial. Maybe you want to learn more about PowerG sensors or Alarm.com's commercial services, or the IQ Lockdown, which we didn't talk about today. I feel like we should have, because that's an awesome new product, especially for commercial, or something else. And put your comment in the chat. What else would you be interested in looking in? While you're doing that, IQ Lockdown is a really cool product that allows you to almost put like a similar to a mag lock, but it's a mechanical lock, and you can put a lock on a door, installs in 20 minutes with just a few bolts, completely wireless with a rechargeable battery, allows you to lock down the a particular door using the IQ panel, using a key fob, using your mobile app, using voice control. Really great way to secure a room, secure a building, and a very affordable way. So highly recommend you check that out on our website. IQ Lockdown is a really cool product that I think a lot of people are very interested in.
Yes.
Anthony says IQ Pro was his answer, and he clicked other and put IQ Pro. We definitely are going to do more about IQ Pro as we continue to develop that product. That will be coming out. Beta is starting very soon on that, and if you're interested in participating in the beta for IQ Pro, put a comment in the chat as well. Say, I want to participate in IQ Pro beta, so that we can get your name on the list. We'd love to get as many people as we can on there. I'm going to go ahead and close this poll. Thank you again to everyone. Siggy, Freddie, thanks for helping us, locate this customer. Cody, can't thank you enough for taking time. I know you're busy doing a lot of things, but your story really helps. So appreciate all your time.
Yeah, there's no problem. Glad I could be a help.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And Bo, thanks for putting this all together again. We appreciate everyone. Thank you for your time, and we will see you on our next webinar.
See you guys.
Bye.